What's up, sports fans? It's your man D back. Speak Your Mind Sports Talk. Errol Spence exposed and Shawn Porter robbed. For the love of sports, let's talk about it.
Yeah, the prison, yeah. Shit happens, niggas want me to talk about it. They love gossip, want me to talk about it. It's all over the gram, so I'ma talk about it. You heard what happened? Niggas want me to talk about it. Shit crazy, niggas want me to talk about it. You heard what happened? Niggas want me to talk about it. Shit happens, niggas want me to talk about it. They love gossip, want me to talk about it. It's all over the gram, so I'ma talk about it. You heard what happened? Niggas want me to talk about it. Shit crazy, niggas want me to talk about it. You heard what happened? Niggas want me to talk about it. Shit happens, niggas want me to talk about it.
Alright, so what a fight, guys. For all of you who watched the fight this past weekend or watched the playback, was an outstanding fight. I was saying before this fight that this fight would answer a lot of questions for both guys, and I'll be damned, this fight definitely answered a lot of questions for both guys, for me, and for a lot of other people. The thing is, you know, I've seen a lot of videos, and I really wanted to lay back some and see what the public opinion was, see what the other channels were feeling before I put out my video about my thoughts. I wanted to kind of lay back and see what the scope of what everyone was saying. It has nothing to do with the bearing on the way I feel about it or the way I see the fight, but I just wanted to kind of let that marinate and let other people come out with their opinions. Sometimes, you know, when you do like a certain fighter, sometimes people find it hard to come from boxing, you know, just looking at two guys in the ring and what they did in that ring. Sorry guys, a truck going by. And how they performed in that ring, and just come from boxing. Try to do your best to leave your biases, or, you know, aside, or your like or actual disdain for the fighter, and to really give a fair assessment and a true assessment of what happened. So I wanted to see what was going on out there. Also, sometimes with a fight that's close like that, it's hard to tell, you know, when you just get to see that fight once, what you're really looking at. Especially when you're rooting for a guy or you're going against another guy, it's kind of hard to give a fair assessment. But a guy like me, like I'm really big on film study with boxing and MMA for that matter. I do film study, and I like to watch these guys' movements, you know, see what they were able to capitalize on and where the deficiencies was and so forth. So I didn't rewatch this fight once. I rewatched this fight not once, not twice, but 3 times over before I made this video. I had to really analyze it because it was a really close fight. And, you know, initially, the night of the fight, I actually had Spence winning fairly comfortably because I had him 8-4 with the knockdown. So, to me, you know, the night of the fight, there was no question that Errol Spence won that fight. I did feel that at, you know, a few levels he was exposed. Even though I felt he won, I still felt that he was exposed in that fight. And so, you know, those feelings haven't changed. Even though I rewatched the fight 3 times, I still feel that he was exposed in that fight, okay? What has changed, though, is that the way I judged the fight, 8-4, that fight was not that wide. That fight was not that wide, and that 116-11, those 2 cards by the judges, 116, 111, the fight wasn't that wide. I had to really analyze this fight, and guys, I do a lot of film study, but I don't just look at fights. I actually know what I'm looking for. I've been trained by 2 professional boxers, and you know, one of them is a coach, and he was a former boxer and a coach, and I've been trained to look at these fights, and I actually know what I'm looking for, and I know how to to determine certain things in a fight. Some people just look at a fight and they're not really aware of how to do actual film studies. So, you know, in my opinion, if you can't determine or predict, so to speak, like which guy would win the fight and be pretty much consistent. This is boxing, so nobody's going to get it right every time. But if you can do the proper film study, then you should be able to, you know, the majority of the time pick a winner in a fight because you know what you're looking at. But you have a lot of these guys out here that just, you know, they run off at the mouth. Oh, this is crazy, and then they can't really predict fights right. So if you can't look at a fight and assess who's going to be the winner of a fight, like you're not really proficient with that, then you can't, in my opinion, you can't really determine a scorecard because you don't know what you're looking at. You know, so you have a lot of bias or opinions coming from fanboys, or on the other side, haters of certain fighters, or even if they dislike a fighter, they're going to have their certain biases about how that fight played out because, again, they don't know what they're looking for. So to me, these guys like that, they don't have any credibility. If you can't sit there and give correct film study on a fight and actually know what's going on, then how do you think you possibly know more about a fight and how it ended up than a trained person that's judging the fight? Now, I said before this Spence Porter fight that the judging would be favorable for Spence. But one thing we have to take into account is these judges, as far as looking at these fights, are first more experienced than us. They do know what to look for in these fights, and they also are looking for certain things. All three judges are not looking for the same thing. Sometimes the level of aggression, who's controlling the pace, who's pushing who back, you know, who's landing the cleaner punches. You know, a lot of these judges are looking for different things, so it's highly subjective, and you can't just base your perspective or your disdain or like, you know, the way you like a fighter. You can't put all of that in there. You have to look at the fight. You have to know what you're looking at and be able to assess the fight. And on that initial card, the initial cards that I had, I was way off. And so I had to watch this fight, you know, a few more times. Like I said, I watched it 3 more times. I saw it the night of the fight, but I watched it 3 more times before I put this video out. And I kind of went around and listened to people. It was a lot of angry people. It was a lot of people that were disappointed. They were Super Spence fans. And then there were some people that just do like I do, and they come from boxing. Not really the disdain of one fighter or the hate of another fighter, but just coming from boxing. And so they look at everything. You know, some of these guys out here want to criticize one boxer or the other. They want to criticize Porter, or they want to criticize Spence. You know, well, Porter didn't do enough. You know, he was getting pummeled, but that's because of the bias and their favoritism for one or the other fighter, and also because they don't know what they're looking at in the ring. I mean, again, if you can't determine who will most likely win a fight, then how can you determine what the judges should have seen? Because you don't know what you're looking at. So with all of that being said, I'm going to run down my card. And it seems today everybody that's driving by here has a muffler problem, but I'm going to run down my card. Hold on, guys. Jeez, I don't think that guy has any muffler on his vehicle. And so I had Spence winning round 1. I had Porter winning round 2. Spence 3, Porter 4. I had Spence edging out round 5. Round 6, I will take, you know, I had that as a swing round. And when I say a swing round, I mean, you know, I can accept that Porter won that round. I can accept that Spence won that round, because round 6 to me was fairly close. Round 7 I had for Shawn Porter. Round 8 I had for Spence. 9 and 10 I had for Shawn Porter. He won both of those rounds. And then, of course, 11, the knockdown round, I don't think anybody is crying about that with Spence's. And then I believe that Spence controlled the final round. So it led me to a 115-112 scorecard. And that's the way I felt it should have been all around the board, 115-112 for Spence. I don't believe that Spence was robbed in this fight. A lot of people believe that Spence was I'm sorry. I don't believe that Porter was robbed in this fight. A lot of people believe that Porter was robbed in the fight because Spence threw an awful lot of low blows, and those low blows shouldn't have been counted as actual hits. That I agree with. But as I watched the videos, like I told you guys, and was listening to the things that people said, about the low blows, again, I cannot go on what anybody says because some of these guys may have been pro Spence and or pro Porter. Some of these guys may not like Spence at all, and so they're gonna key on what Spence did. So, the second time I watched the fight, I was actually looking for the fouls, the rabbit punches and the low blows. Okay? And to be perfectly honest, the rabbit punches were fairly even. Now, I know people don't want to hear this because, and I'm talking about the people that's really not comfortable with the fight not being a robbery, and also the people that really don't like Spence. But again, I look at this from coming straight from boxing, not from the perspective of a fan, because I don't fanboy for anybody. I don't lean on any side of the street, not PBC, Top Rank, Golden Boy, or any of that. I come from boxing and boxing first. You get punches here, slightly behind the ear, and I agree that that's a punch that should not count as a point. But when they're behind the head, that's when you're going to get that rabbit punch call, and it's either from the judges or from the ref. And I think that Jack Reese did a decent job. I think he could have warned Spence a lot more for those low blows, because I'm getting ready to talk about that, and there were quite a bit. But I think he did a decent job. And if you go back and you watch a lot of boxing, there are plenty of fighters that hit slightly behind that ear. When you come in with hooks and guys are moving the way that Shawn Porter moves, you're going to get that. But, a lot of people want to charge Spence with that. But what I saw in that fight, and if they go back and they watch that fight, Spence wasn't the only one throwing some rabbit punches. Shawn Porter, trying to get behind that high guard, threw a lot behind the ear too. So I call the rabbit punches, or so what would be a rabbit punch, I call it a wash, because I didn't see either of those guys clearly trying to hit behind the head, and that's the clear rabbit punch. Those are the things that are dangerous and we need to stay away from. Hitting a guy slightly behind the ear, though illegal, is not something that's going to be called all the time. But again, if you have disdain for one or the other fighter, then you're definitely going to call all of those and see all of those as a strike on a point. But those things were fairly even, the rabbit punches. Now, the low blows, however, were not fairly even. Spence clearly threw more low blows. Spence clearly threw quite a bit of low blows. And by my assessment and my count, and I counted every low blow, 22 low blows Spence threw. 22 low blows. That's a lot. And I believe he only got one warning from Jack Reese for that, and that's kind of, that's off. But again, on the other side, which guys are not paying attention to, Porter is not the most accurate punches. And, all of these videos that I heard about guys crying about Spence's low blows, I didn't hear them cry or say anything, not one time, about Porter's low blows. And see, the thing is because that's where the bias kicks in. They're not really, they just have the idea that Porter was robbed, and so they're not paying attention to any of that. But again, I came from boxing, and I paid attention to all of that, not just some of it. And by my count, Porter threw 18 himself. So Spence threw 4 more than him. He threw 22 low blows, and Porter threw 18. That's a total of 40 low blows in this fight, which is a lot, guys. It's a lot. And I will say this, and I mean this, Porters were not intentional. Porters were non-intentional. Some of those low blows that I seen from Spence, while he wants to cry dirty fighter, some of those low blows were intentional. You can't deny that they weren't intentional. That's just the facts. Not all 22 of them were intentional. Which, of course, these guys, that want to call Spence dirty or cheater or, feel like Porter was robbed, they're going to say that every low blow he threw was intentional and it was ridiculous. And, again, guys, that's just the bias of boxing. And people that don't like Spence, and even a lot of people that just can't stand the PBC and the way they move. And me personally, I cannot stand the way the PBC moves, because if they move differently, we get a lot more of the fights that we want to see. And I don't appreciate that. I never stick up for that nonsense, because like all of these guys, these networks should do cross-network promotions and get these fights, man. We should get these fights. We pay enough money. We support the sport. And, I'm not with that foolishness at all. The PBC needs to do a lot better job of cross-network promotions. They need to do a lot better job. They're clearly, by far, hands down, the worst in boxing for not doing this cross-network promotion. And it's a problem. It keeps us from getting the best fights. And they're a huge, huge, huge part of it. The most, more than anyone. They're a part of us not getting the best fights. A lot of people that defend the PBC, they want to say, oh, well, they give us good fights, but they're not giving us the best fights by preventing the cross-network promotions. The PBC doesn't even want to work with the zone at all. And that's absolutely ridiculous. That keeps us from getting the best fights. You guys cannot tell me that Charlo versus Andre wouldn't be a fight like this one, Porter versus Spence, and would answer a lot of questions. But what's the odds of us getting that fight when the PBC clearly comes out and say that they're not going to work with the zone at all? Farmer Tank. You see, this stops us from getting the best fights, and the guys that protect or support the PBC, I guess they don't want to admit or accept that that is an issue, and it is a huge issue. So with that disdain that a lot of fans have for the PBC, that kind of wears on how they'll judge these fights, but I don't really look at them that way. So with that being said, a lot of these videos that charge Spence for the low blows and those punches shouldn't account, well, it was a 4-punch difference as far as low blows. If you hit a certain spot below that belt line, it's a low blow. Okay, whether Porter was trying to do it intentionally or not, and he wasn't trying to do it intentionally, I will definitely say he wasn't trying to. Though Porter fought an excellent fight, bro. Porter showed a lot more in that fight than any of these Spence fanboys or diehard Spence fans gave him credit for. He showed a lot. He exposed Spence on a lot of levels in this fight because of the higher level of competition. Yes, Spence was exposed in this fight. He was also exposed because he said he was going to knock Porter out. So for as much as these Spence super fans, diehards, and fanboys don't want to hear the word exposed because they look at exposed as being something negative, it's just a word. He was exposed. You go there and you talk all of that about knocking a guy out. You're supposed to knock him out. No questions, no excuses. You're supposed to knock him out. And if you don't, you're exposed for that, okay? So accept it. Just accept it. He was exposed. He was exposed at the level of a fighter that he was supposed to be. Yeah, he proved that he can win a fight because, again, I have him edging out that fight. I know a lot of people don't agree with it, but, whatever. I do film study. I know what I'm looking at, and if you like to see me in the debate cage, D. Jefferson's debate cage about it, then welcome. I welcome. Because I know what I'm looking at. And a lot of people want to sit there and use their scorecards, but they can't even predict the fight. Well, if you can't predict the damn fight, then you can't judge a fight. Period. If you're predicting casuals to win a fight, you can't look at these two guys and say, hey, this guy will beat this guy. How can you judge a fight? You don't even know what the hell you're looking at. So I will invite you into the debate cage. I think Spence edged that fight out. 8-4, 116, 111, and all of that nonsense. Woo, bees. Allergic, guys. Sorry about that. But, not scared of a bee. I'm just allergic to bees. I have to go right to the hospital. So, but yeah, if you can't do that and you really don't know what you're looking at, then I don't really have faith in you determining who won or who lost the fight. I'm going to go with my eyes, because one thing I do know, and anybody that knows me know that I do very good film study. We got 35, 34 people, and shout out to Champ Ross Fantasy Boxing Prediction League on Facebook. Go join that. Best league. Champ Ross is great. But it's all about predicting fights. And, right now, last week I was in #1 place. This past week with the Spence fight and all of these fights, I took #1 for this week. I'm #1 because I do film study. So you can question me, you can say I don't know boxing or whatever, but I can damn sure do film study and look at a fight and predict pretty much who's going to win a fight. And if you can't do that, then you can't tell me anything about scoring a fight, because you didn't even know what the hell you're looking at. And that's why I will gladly invite anybody who thinks otherwise in the debate cage. Just that simple. Like, you can't tell me anything if you can't predict fights better than me, because that's a part of being able to judge a fight. You have to know what you're looking at, period, guys. And so I had Spence edging that fight out. I don't agree with those scorecards, but I do not believe it was a robbery. And I'm not alone. Shout out to Shawn Newton Boxing. Shawn, he's he's pretty good with assessing these fights, and I know people don't like the LDC, but shout out to Cali Enigma. He assessed fights pretty good. Some of these guys I know can do film study. I'm not going to start naming off too many people, because I don't want to get too many people coming at me talking about you like this guy, you like that guy, whatever. Shout out to Unrivaled Boxing. This guy knows more about boxing than most people I know. I mean, he really knows the sport. He doesn't see it the way I see it. He's actually on the other end of the spectrum. He believes Porter won the fight. But I will respect what he says, because this guy really knows his boxing. And he's, I believe, first in his prediction league. So you're talking about two guys that's first in their prediction league that knows how to do film study, and we disagree on the fight, but I can respect his opinion. But if you can't pick a damn fight, if you can't assess a fight, if you can't look at two fighters and know who logically should win, then you can't tell me anything. McGregor, Unrivaled Boxer, I will accept his assessment on it, because this guy knows boxing. Okay? So, no need for him to challenge me on. We've already actually talked about it, and he respects my opinion on it, and I respect his opinion on it. But there's a lot of guys out there that just run off at the mouth, and I can guarantee you I forgot more about boxing than these guys know. And so if those guys would like to see me in D. Jefferson's debate cage, step right up to the plate. Just that simple. But I think that Spence edged this fight out. I think it was a very close fight. I just gave you guys my scorecard. That knockdown round was the determining factor. Without that knockdown, we may be singing another story here. And had Spence still won, I would be calling it a robbery right along with those guys. But I just feel like that knockdown round was the determining factor, and that gave him the edge, to justify a unanimous decision. I don't agree with that 115-112 for Porter, again, but that's a judge, and much respect and love to that judge, because that judge has more experience at looking at these fights and judging these fights than I do. So I'm not going to take anything away from that judge that gave it to Porter 115-112. The fight was actually that close that, I can see that, but I just don't agree with it. Also, as I said before, judges are looking for certain things. So we can't determine, or because what we see, what that judge is looking for. The level of aggression, who was on the back. Spence stood his ground. People say, oh, this guy did better against Porter. Porter pushed a lot of people back and had them, going backwards the whole fight. That was not the case in this fight. And anybody that says that, they're an idiot, because that definitely wasn't the case this fight. He didn't muscle Spence or push him down. It was a rugged fight. It was a really rugged fight. But Porter showed me some things. He hurt Spence in that fight. There's a lot of Spence fans that didn't think he would be able to hurt Spence. Me being one of them. I didn't. I said that Porter didn't have the punch power to be able to hurt Spence too much, but he proved me wrong. Porter, shout out to Shawn Porter. I give him much, 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 much more credit than I gave him prior to this fight. Much credit. And I respect Shawn Porter like hell now, because he put up a hell of a fight. And that was a really close fight. And without that knockdown round, like I said, we could be singing the same song. A different song, a draw, or maybe giving Porter that decision. That was a great fight. So Porter, shout out to you, man. Shout out to you, Shawn Porter. But I do edge Spence in this fight. I do believe that knockdown round was a determining factor, and I implore all of you guys that have disdain or don't like Spence to just go back and watch that fight and watch Porter solely. Don't look at Spence, Because if you don't like the guy and you're looking at Spence, you're just basically going to focus on all the things that he did and all the things that he did not do. Watch the guy that you believe won. And I can guarantee you that you will see at least, because it could be some that I missed, but you will see at least 18 low blows if you're looking at the belt line. Now, Spence has some way below the belt line, which were clear low blows, and I get you. I get it, guys. I get it. But 22 was my count for Spence, and 18 was my count for Porter. And so you can't just say, if you take away all of those low blows from Spence, then you don't get all of those points. Well, then if you go to the other side and take away the points for all the low blows from Porter, then it comes, really closer to what those judges gave. And with the rabbit punches, guys, behind the head, come on, guys, this slightly behind the ear nonsense, we get that in damn near every fight. Every fight that guys, especially guys that throw a lot of hooks, you're going to get that. Also, these guys are not taking into account, you guys are not referees either. And Jack Reese warned Shawn Porter a few times about something, pulling the back of Spence's neck down. So when he's pulling the back of Spence's neck down and Spence goes in for a body punch, what is that? That may cause the punch to go low. So why you guys think that he's doing it on purpose? See, you got to come from boxing. Spence pulling Porter's head down, leaning on him, and Porter throwing. That's going to cause punches to go low. And both of these guys was doing this to each other. So look at it from boxing, guys, and stop looking at it from your biased perspectives or your hate or disdain for either or fighter. I implore all of you guys that were super duper Spence fans or super duper Spence haters. The super duper Spence fans, go look at the fight and look solely at Spence. Don't look at what Porter was doing. Look at Spence punches. Look at the things he was doing, and you will see that some of those low blows were intentional. Whether you want to believe that or not, they were intentional. And for all of you guys that hate Spence in the PBC, go watch Porter. Just Porter. You will see him pulling the back of his neck down, and that will cause these punches to go low. You will see Porter throw at least 18 low blows. You will see Porter throw some rabbit punches that you guys are complaining about. You guys have to come and look at these fights from the eyesight of boxing. Boxing first, boxer second. But when you can't do that, then you're going to get these biased opinions. Then you guys have to respect these judges, because you're not judges and you're not experienced and you don't have a clue what these judges are looking for. So you can't just holler robbery. I always have this saying that it's in the books. It's in the books, guys. We can cry robbery on a lot of fights, but it's in the books. And I just come from boxing first, boxer second. So I know that there's going to be a lot of people out there that don't agree with my assessment on this fight. I believe that it was a great fight. Spence was exposed. And I will say this last thing before I end this video. Prior to this fight, I knew that Spence would beat Crawford. I think I had like 60-40, and I gave Crawford a chance, but I just thought Spence was just going to be too strong for him. But Spence showed me a lot in this fight. And, shout out to one of my guys. He says that Spence shows that he could fight the other man's fight. And, I understand that opinion, but I actually have this fight with those two guys, 50-50. But I'm actually edging Crawford out. And I know a lot of you guys won't like to hear that, but I would say 50-50, and I would give Crawford the edge after what I seen on that fight. And that's just my assessment on it, whether you guys like it or not. I don't see it as a wash for Crawford, because, again, a lot of guys that don't like Spence, they automatically have Crawford washing Spence now. But that's just a triangle theory. Because what I would like to see, especially given the respect to Porter that I give to him, I would like to see Crawford fight Porter, because he's not fought anybody at 147. A lot of guys like to lean on Crawford's prior achievements at lower weights. But he's at 147 now. And no one's going to tell me that Crawford's anywhere near as durable or as tough as Shawn Porter. I would like to see how Crawford handles those problems against a Shawn Porter, because he's not fought anyone at that weight level. And so if Crawford goes in there and he washes or demolishes Porter, then I would change my assessment on that fight again. But we have to see Crawford step up the level of competition too before we just say that Crawford washes Spence from the triangle theory. We can't do that. That's not boxing, guys. Let's see Crawford, because the demand was for Spence to step up in a higher level of competition. So shouldn't we hold this same demand on Crawford at 147? Because Khan ain't gonna cut it. Don't tell me that Khan's chin is anything near Porter's chin. Don't tell me that it wasn't a low blow that Crawford hit Khan with. I'm not saying at all that's why he wanted to fight. He would have beat the hell out of Khan anyway. Don't tell me that Jeff Horn, which is nowhere near the boxer Porter is, didn't catch Crawford cleanly in that corner. Didn't catch Crawford with a body shot and send him back. So we need Crawford to step up on a higher level. And Karolakis, that ain't gonna do it, bro. I would like to see Crawford fight a Danny Porter or fight Danny Garcia or Shawn Porter, and see, let's assess him at a higher level at 147 before we just give him a wash. The same way I told the Spence fans even prior to this fight, Crawford can win that fight. I mean, I had a 60-40, but I wasn't counting Crawford out for this fight. Spence fans had no way Crawford, he'll destroy Spence and all that. I don't think that they sound that way now. But let's give it time, guys. Let's be reasonable about these fights. For the love of sports, let's talk about it. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell icon, so you know when I drop these videos. Peace, guys.
Shit happens, niggas want me to talk about it. They love gossip, want me to talk about it. It's all over the gram, so I'ma talk about it. You heard